Okay, let's continue. Thanksgiving part 6. I think there's going to be 2 parts left. This one and the next one. Temple attendants. I just eaten breakfast the next morning when Elvira's seamstresses arrived with a slew of new clothes. I was surprised, to say the least. There were far more items than I'd ordered, some of which bore designs I'd never seen before. I expressed my curiosity and found out that many of the garments belonged to Florencia and to Bonifacius' late first wife. Elvira had asked the seamstresses to gather and alter them for my use during the Archduke Conference. I tried on the clothes and gave my thoughts. My next tasks for the day were to eat lunch and then head to the temple where I would inform my attendants and the Gutenbergs of our plans for the move, make various arrangements, and meet with the new head of the Plantin company. Wait. The new head of the Plantin company? Isn't Benno still in charge of all that? Right? I don't know. Elvira's attendants took the table and chairs out of my hidden room. I waited until the room was empty before touching its magic circle and closing it for good. We are glad to see you leave the nest, but sad as well, one of the attendants told me, clearly emotional. They had taken care of me since I first came to the estate as Rozemyne. Your growth must feel so abrupt because we have known you since your baptism. Though you spent relatively little time here, many wonderful changes have come about since your arrival. I hope we might see you more regularly, but alas. The attendants here had assumed they would see more of me once the divide between the Lies gangs and the archducal family was resolved and socializing with my extended family became less of an issue. It was unfortunate, but the Obvan of the duchy would be treated as a visitor in Ehrenfest castle and certainly wouldn't be able to visit an estate such as this. It's a shame that faction politics prevented me from coming more often, I said. Still, I am grateful to all the staff of this estate. You are grateful to us? I was raised in the temple, so this estate was my first experience with noble society. Had you all mocked me or looked down on me because of my background, I might never have been adopted. It was because everyone in this estate had accepted me that I'd reached my adoption without realizing how much noble society looked down on people raised in the temple. My status as an archducal family member had protected me from then on, but then I didn't even want to imagine what might have happened to me without their support. Elvira and Ferdinand would have looked out for me, sure, but the attitude of the attendants in one's room was especially important. Attendants, I said, focusing on them, I thank you ever so much for accepting me as a daughter of the estate. Be proud, you raised Ab Alexandria. Oh, I suppose I am. My children will not hear the end of my boasting. I assure you, I am proud to have spent this time with you, Lady Rozemyne. The attendants began discussing their old memories of me. Even back then, she was an exceptionally quick learner. Remember when she picked out clothes for her baptism? Lady Elvira couldn't decide between 2 outfits, so she ordered them both. Lady Rozemyne was so eager to see the bookroom that she collapsed in the hallway. To think she's engaged. It feels like only yesterday that she was too scared to go to the bathroom at night. It wasn't going to the bathroom that scared me. It was those slimy things inside the toilet. Yeah. As much as I wanted to correct them, I wouldn't gain anything from it. They would smile and nod at my obvious excuses. I wish they wouldn't discuss all these embarrassing memories right in front of me. Most of what they remembered about me was from my early days at the estate. We hadn't really done much together since. I proceeded to the entrance hall while the ladies continued to exchange stories. My guard knights had apparently come to get me. Over here, Lady Rozemyne. I spied Judith and Angelica waiting by the door. Feline had gone to the temple ahead of us. Muriella was there with them, carrying the tools of a scholar. You intend to meet with your merchants in the temple, no? Elvira asked. Please let Muriella go with you. I wish to form my own connection with the new head of the Plantin company. So, what, is Benno not doing anything, or are they... I can't remember what Benno was doing. I'm assuming he's setting up his own branch of the Plantin company wherever they were planning on going, and whoever's here in Ehrenfest, I guess, never mind. Yeah, the new head of the Plantin company for Ehrenfest. I nodded and said, certainly, let us go, Muriella. The future of Ehrenfest's printing industry depended on Elvira's relationship with the Plantin company. Before taking my leave, I turned to the line of attendants who had gathered to say farewell. I would still see Elvira in the Royal Academy's dormitory and during the Archduke Conference, but I would never see these attendants again. In the past, female Archduke candidates leaving their home duchy would entreat Jagures, the goddess of separation, for her divine protection, I said. I would ask you to pray to her, not to Dragana, the goddess of time. As you wish, Lady Rozemyne. May you be blessed by Jagures, the goddess of separation. I thank you ever so much. And with that, I set out for the temple. Welcome back, Lady Rozemyne. Feline wasn't the only one waiting our arrival. All of my temple attendants had gathered with her. It was a rare sight, considering that Gil and Fritz were usually so busy in the workshop. Thank you, I replied. Fran, Zom, I suspect Feline and the others have already told you, but it has been formally decided that I shall become Ab Alexandria. I asked them to come with me, and they smiled warmly in response. We have also been told that the gods granted you and Lord Ferdinand their guidance, Fran said. Yes, indeed. Boy, that was a big lot there. Ehrenfest and Messinor were bad enough, but then all the other gods got involved. It was awful. My brow lowered into a bitter frown as I remembered shining from the divine power, losing my memories, and very nearly dying. Fran and Zom must not have expected my response because they both stared at me like they couldn't believe their ears. Lady Rozemyne, we meant to congratulate you on your engagement to Lord Ferdinand, Zom said, looking troubled. You did get engaged, did you not? Oh, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that something else. Sorry. Oh, I see. Yes, we completed our engagement ceremony. This is my engagement face on which nobles give to one another when getting engaged. I presented my necklace in an attempt to distract them from my blunder. Lady Rozemyne, Judith whispered, nobody else would think he meant a genuine encounter with the gods. That may be true, but still, I thought they were bringing it up because it was a cool and really interesting thing to happen to someone. No, I figured they would have brought it up considering that's the temple. They pray to the gods in the temple. To have an actual encounter with the gods themselves was something to talk about. I turned around. Judith smiled and gestured to Fran and the others, indicating that we should continue our conversation inside. Feline gave a firm nod. Lady Rozemyne, shall we discuss the move in the High Bishop's chambers? There have been so many major changes to our plans that Judith said we should get everyone on the same page before speaking with Lord Melchior. That is why I gathered all your temple attendants here today. Fran and Zom made their way into the temple. I tried to follow them, but a child's voice stopped me in my tracks. You'll be late if you don't hurry up. We're coming. Surprised to hear shouting inside the temple, I turned toward the source of the noise. Dirk was calling up the third floor while a group of apprentice blue shrine maidens rushed downstairs. Dirk, we have guests visiting the temple, Fran said, chastising the boy. You must speak quietly when outside your room. Children's voices produced especially loud echoes. Dirk and the apprentices recoiled and sincerely apologized. Fran turned to the attendant and said, it is important to prepare ahead of time so that the one you serve does not need to rush. Oh, Lady Rozemyne, welcome, Dirk exclaimed, smiling from ear to ear the moment he saw me with Fran. As adorable as he looked, it wasn't appropriate behavior for a noble. I still remembered all the times people scolded me for not keeping my emotions under control. It is good to see everyone so lively. I am told you worked very hard during spring prayer, I said. Is there somewhere you need to be? There's a study session about religious ceremonies being held in one of the meeting rooms, Dirk replied, doing his best to sound polite. Now, if you'll excuse me, I really must be going. He took his leave, having found the perfect opportunity to escape Fran's lecturing. Together with the others, I continued through the temple until we reached the High Bishop's chambers. I would normally change immediately upon my arrival, but Fran pointed to a work desk. Over here, if you would. There were boxes piled in the corner of the room. Monica and Nicola were preparing tea instead of my High Bishop's robes. Do I not need to change, I asked. Fran shook his head. Once it was clear that Ehrenfest would need to perform spring prayer without you, Lord Melchior was formally inaugurated as the High Bishop. Melchior had taken over as the High Bishop while I was fighting in the sovereignty and meeting with the royal family. It was the right choice, without a doubt, but it saddened me to think that the temple had changed without me. Not having to wear the robes meant there was no longer a place for me here. Then I will need to close this sooner rather than later, I said, heading not to the desk but to the chamber's hidden room. Anyone with an approved registration brooch could access it, so it had already been cleared out. I double-checked to make sure it was empty before closing it. I really had spent a long time in there if one counted my 2 years in a Jareve. Lady Rozemyne, what are these major changes you wish to report? Fran asked once I was seated at the desk, speaking as everyone's representative. I was going to move to the sovereignty as the king's adopted daughter, but decided to become the Ob of Old Ehrensbach instead. Following that, the temple of my new duchy will need to be revolutionized to meet our standards. I explained that Alexandria's temple had many of the same problems that had once plagued this one, that I intended to take in those orphaned during the war, and that I wanted to set up my own temple classrooms. My apologies, Feline, but I need to move Fran and Zom to Alexandria before I come of age. I'd wanted to leave one of them behind to support her, but revolutionizing the temple meant I needed as many of the attendants who had improved things here in Ehrenfest as I could get. They are both ready to leave, but what of Monica and Nicola? Feline asked. Do you plan to take them too? She understood that Fran and Zom would probably move with me. Ferdinand and Hartmut had approached them both after the defense of Ehrenfest. Thinking about all the work they must have done for my sake made me feel a little guilty. I wish to bring Fran immediately, and preferably Zom as well. Monica and Nicola, however, must remain here until you come of age. They are welcome to move with you, should they so desire. As long as they stay with me, I should be fine, but I would appreciate at least one more attendant who's good with paperwork, Feline said hesitantly. I saw nothing wrong with her taking a new attendant, especially when I was taking Fran and Zom, who were both known for their paperwork skills. I gave her permission and looked at Wilma and Gil. I spoke of purchasing the two of you after coming of age, but the circumstances have changed. Now I would ask you to come with me and spend time living in Alexandria's temple. I needed Wilma to help look after the war orphans in the girls' building and set up an appropriate learning environment, while Gil was important for his knowledge of operating the workshop. Perhaps you could remain a great shrine maiden and priest, move with the Plantin company, and assist with the reform. I could purchase you afterward. That is fine with me, Wilma replied. I would feel much safer in the temple with you than in the castle, and the essence of my role, caring for children who have lost their parents, would remain the same. It was an easy decision for her, as her greatest fear had always been having to leave the temple. My eyes turned to Gil, whose shoulders were slumped. I don't mind moving with you, since that was the plan from the start, but I was hoping to leave the temple, he said. Zom gave his fellow attendant a pat on the back. I know you want a change of pace, but you understand the temple workshop better than the rest of us. I would not be much help in setting up a new one, and the same goes for Fran. We each have our own areas of expertise. Yeah, that's true, Gil said, crossing his arms with a nod. The temple is its own separate world, and no one is better equipped to start a new printing workshop than I am. Not to mention, having a history of working with the temple should make it easier for the Plantin company to get along with the Merchants Guild. I know Benno and Lutz were worried about developing their store in a new duchy. Gil was of the opinion that the Merchants Guild wouldn't be able to look down on the Plantin company when I consistently depended on them for work. It was a perspective unique to him, for he was raised in the temple, but had experience going out into the world of merchantry. I promise to purchase you and grant you freedom from the temple when I come of age, I said. Until then, I ask only that you help with its renovation. You were the first to plead with me to change the temple, were you not? Ah, it was Gil who first asked me to save the abused orphans when he learned about the harrowing state of the basement. I smiled, remembering when Ferdinand asked me whether I was resolved to become the orphanage director, and the anxiety that had overwhelmed me as a result. Gil, I said, I want you to be a role model for Alexandria's orphans. The temple's workshop had only done so well because Gil actively cooperated with Lutz. His work with the Plantin company and the other Gutenbergs had given him a life outside the temple, and I hoped that would continue in Alexandria. You can inspire the orphans by leaving the temple to work in the lower city like Volk did when he left to start a family. Fewer people will mock grays and orphans once they are on equal terms with the children of merchants. Do provide your support until the new workshop finds its footing. Gil stuck out his chest, showing not a trace of worry that he might be kicked out of my attendance. His self-assured grin spoke to his growth, and I could tell at a glance that he took great pride in his job. No one who saw him now would guess that he had once been the temple's worst problem child. Understood. As someone used to your crazy demands who set up workshops all over the duchy, not just in the temple, I guarantee that you can count on me. Of course, I doubt I can manage on my own, so I wish for at least 3 assistants to accompany me. Gil then turned to Fritz, already thinking about the future. Running the workshop on your own won't be easy. You should ask Lady Rozemyne to let you take a partner. Indeed, Lady Rozemyne, would you ask Lord Melchior or Lord Casimir to take Bartz as a workshop manager? I would rather Dirk take him, but I realize that is out of the question. Taking a new attendant significantly increased one's cost of living. Bartz would spend most of his time as a manager in the workshop, and Dirk didn't have the funds to provide for an attendant who wouldn't really tend to him in his room. Certainly, I shall ask Melchior. Fritz, will you take issue with serving him? Not at all. It would be tough to protect the workshop without being the High Bishop's attendant, and I would appreciate a position where I can speak directly to the Archducal family. I took a moment to absorb my attendant's stances, then sighed. My destination changing from the sovereignty to Alexandria had caused all sorts of complications. I expected Benno to give me a stern glare during our looming discussion, but I needed to ask him to help Fran and the others move sooner than expected. Having them set out on such a long-distance trip on their own wasn't an option. And all those wooden boxes need to be moved. My belongings are mostly ready for transport, so I plan to borrow carriages and servants from the castle and give this room to Melchior post-haste. I wasn't the High Bishop anymore, so I couldn't keep monopolizing these chambers. If you do that, Lady Rozemyne, we will not have anywhere to ourselves until we leave. Ah, in my hurry to hand over the chambers, I'd completely forgotten their connection to Fran's and the others' rooms. Feline, could they borrow the rooms in the Orphanage Director's chambers until then? The Orphanage Director's chambers had 2 floors for its attendants. Those of the same gender as their charge stayed on the upper floor, while everyone else slept on the floor below. It would aid us greatly if we could use the rooms that had once gone to Fran and Gil. My idea caused Judith to frown. Lady Rozemyne, living with men not in her service will only tarnish Feline's reputation. They may be on separate floors, but it still counts as the same chambers. Ah! Noble standards! They had completely slipped my mind. I was racking my brain for a solution when Mariella interjected. Does she need to sleep in the temple? She has rooms in the castle and Lord Karstadt's estate. Good point, Feline replied. We aren't so busy that I need to live in the temple, and it was already my intention to stay in the castle before Lady Rozemyne's departure. Fran and the others are welcome to use the orphanage director's chambers. I nodded. Now that Feline had given her approval, my temple attendants could use the orphanage director's chambers when I gave the high bishop's chambers to Melchior. I was relieved to know they were going to be okay. Lady Rozemyne, though I am reluctant to ask, could you stop by the orphanage? Delia wishes to speak with you. Someone from the orphanage is summoning Lady Rozemyne? Judith and Mariella asked together, their eyes wide in shock. Only out of necessity, I explained. Ehrenfest has forbidden Delia from ever leaving the orphanage. We have time before 5th bell, and I was hoping to see the orphanage one last time before my departure. I will go there now. Wilma set out ahead of us to deliver the news. Gil and Fritz headed to the workshop. Feline, I said, I need documents summarizing how many Gutenbergs are moving with their families and whatever information we'd obtained about the new head of the Plantin company. Can you fetch them for me? We have the information you seek, but we've yet to actually compile it. Please have it done before our meeting with the merchants at 5th bell. Very well. I shall return to the orphanage director's chambers at once. Lady Rozemyne, may I accompany Feline? Mariella asked. She was here as a scholar, having been sent by Elvira, and would most certainly be of more use formulating documents than visiting the orphanage. Certainly. Do what you can to assist her. The pair departed with Monica and Nicola while I went to the orphanage with Fran and the others. Lady Rozemyne, Fran said, I am glad to have been asked to move with you and Lord Ferdinand, but I grow more anxious as we near the end of our preparations. It feels like I am giving up my place here. I know how you feel, Zom added. As much as I look forward to my new life, it makes me terribly sad to say farewell to all the people and places I care about. Gil would eventually leave the temple to live elsewhere, but not Fran and Zom. They must have been even uneasier than they were letting on, and it fell to me as their lady to support them. I steel my resolve as we arrive at the girls' building. Welcome, Lady Rozemyne. I gazed around the orphanage's dining hall while the great shrine maidens greeted me. They could now make food and sustain themselves when the blue priest's gifts weren't enough. I spied bookshelves and toy boxes filled with learning materials in the corner. Things really have changed. It wasn't just the orphanage that stood out to me. The people had changed too. Most of them were baptized now, and some had even come of age. Tuli came of age too, and the ceremony takes place at the end of summer. If he moves to Alexandria before then, won't that mean his family can't celebrate with him? As I contemplated whether to postpone Les's departure, I locked eyes with Delia. Seeing her filled me with nostalgia. I'd visited the orphanage countless times. Quite a while had passed since our last meeting. Once again, I was reminded of the length of my absence. Lady Rozemyne, may I have a moment of your time? She asked. I agreed, and she rose to her feet. It hadn't been as obvious when she was on her knees and bowing her head, but she looked especially unwell. I could tell she was forcing herself to smile. I just spoke with Dirk, I said. I was relieved to see him well, but you, Delia, look a little worse for wear. I cannot bear being apart from him, she replied, then cast her light blue eyes down. At long last, I understand what you meant by not wanting to be separated from your family. Delia must have been thinking about the events of the past. Besenwalst and Count Bindewald tricking her into putting Dirk's name on a submission contract, our fight against Count Bindewald, my imploring Sylvester to save her life. Various thoughts came and went. There was a moment of silence before Delia looked up again. May I keep this with me? She held out the submission contract for Dirk we had prepared in case of an emergency. It was years old, meaning she must have kept it safe all this time. Dirk sometimes visits the orphanage, and he's having as hard a time as you can imagine. I wish to depend on you if everything becomes too much for him. In short, Delia wanted to keep the contract as a protective charm or last resort. I took it from her nonetheless. I couldn't allow her to use it. My apologies, but no, Dirk is no longer an orphan with the devouring. He is a noble of Ehrenfest. I am neither the High Bishop nor the orphanage director, and soon I will not even be a member of this duchy's archducal family. It would not be right to bind him to me without Ehrenfest's permission. That you would have to ask Sylvester about that. I was about to be recognized as the new Ob Alexandria. I couldn't risk doing anything that might become a major interduchy incident. The look on Delia's face told me she hadn't expected my response. If something happens to Dirk, first rely on Melchior the High Bishop, or his backer, the Ob, I stress. Do not mistake this order. A careless action on your part could put Dirk in a more desperate situation than before, and make a resolvable problem completely uncorrectable. Delia paled and clasped her hands in front of her chest. In the past, she had put her faith in the wrong man, exposing Dirk to danger and almost bringing about her own execution. I could tell she wouldn't make the same mistake again. If you first receive Ob Ehrenfest's permission, I would do all that I can to help Dirk, I said. That much I can promise you. Right. I could see the sorrow in Delia's eyes. Now that Dirk was a noble, she must have felt like she'd lost her purpose. She needed a duty that only she could perform. Delia, Dirk became a noble because he knew orphans and grey priests alone would not be enough to stand against the tyranny of nobles, I said. He did it to protect the orphanage, to protect you. I know, but You are duty-bound to protect the orphanage with him. Delia said nothing in response. She just stared at me like she didn't understand. As a noble, Dirk will protect the orphanage from the outside. I want you to protect it from the inside. From the inside? If not properly managed, it could crumble even without noble interference. Its children will not have anybody to take care for them. I want you to promise me you will not let that happen. That might be too much to promise on a whim, Delia muttered, though she wore a slight grimace. I could see life returning to her eyes. I couldn't help but chuckle at how easy it was to motivate her. I want you to be the orphanage's big sister, I said, trying to invoke the same feeling as when I'd asked her to care for Dirk. Treat all the orphans and apprentices here like family. Delia's shock gave way to a chuckle, and she let out a quiet "Jeez." And she took a deep breath. "Jeez, Lady Rozemyne, you always dump so much work on me." She was pretending to be annoyed, but her great big smile made her true emotions clear. I wasn't scared in the slightest. "But you can manage it, can you not?" "Of course," she declared. "So I promise, I'll become the orphanage's big sister and protect it from the inside." Yay! Okay, let's see. Meeting with the merchants. Once we'd concluded our business in the orphanage, I went to Melchior's room, and Ordnance informed us that we should go through the documents before the merchants arrived. "Rozemyne," Melchior said when he saw me, "I am glad you can make it. Seeing my cute younger brother in his high bishop robes made me less upset about leaving the temple and more remorseful. His inauguration had come and gone, but my belongings kept him from moving into the chambers he deserved. I refused to make him wait much longer. I will clear out my chambers and give them to you as soon as I can. I never thought my absence during spring prayer would require us to accelerate the handover." "It's fine," he said. "Our original plan was to do it right before the Archduke Conference, and you didn't expect to spend so long at Ehrenfest, so..." On a more important note, Casimir indicated a desk covered with documents, some of which belonged to my retinue. "Might we discuss your attendance schedules?" I apologized for the sudden change of plan, but I wish to bring Fran, Zom, Wilma, and Gil with me to Alexandria's temple, I said. Monica and Nicola will join Feline's service, while Fritz will serve Melchior. I also like 3 grey priests to help establish a new workshop. Casimir knew about Ferdinand and Hartmann's scouting. He crossed his arms, seeming troubled, and plainly replied, "If Fran and Zom both leave the High Bishop's chambers, only Monica and Nicola will understand its responsibilities." I tilted my head at him. Back when I was the apprentice Blue Shrine Maiden, the High Bishop did so little work that Ferdinand was forced to take over his duties. Lothar, Guido, and his other attendants from that time should also know how to do them. Isn't that right, Fran? Zom had joined my service when I took over as the High Bishop, so that Fran had someone to help with the workload. He had understood the job from the start, so I suspected that any of Ferdinand's old attendants would fit the bill. Emir and Kurt spent very little time doing High Bishop work, but Lothar and Guido would do perfectly. Lord Ferdinand took over such duties while Lady Rozemyne was in her Jareve. Zom nodded in response to Fran's explanation. Casimir was the current high priest, so they were both extremely serious. They wouldn't be able to leave the temple without his permission, no matter what Ferdinand or I said. "Could you not take new attendants in both chambers and ask those with experience to educate those without?" Zom asked. "If you base your search on the same criteria as Lord Ferdinand, then you should find some relatively skilled candidates." "So say Fran and Zom," Casimir said. "Lothar, what do you think?" At once, all eyes fell on him. Guido and I are the only ones still familiar with the High Bishop's chambers, while Emir and Kurt are the same for the High Priest's chambers. To that end, I would advise taking new attendants who are excellent with paperwork. Casimir nodded. "I will need to ask about Lord Ferdinand's criteria later." From there, I mentioned my desire for a new person to help run the workshop. Now that Gil plans to move with me, we would propose that either you or Melchior ask Bartz to start working as the workshop's manager. It's much too risky to leave Fritz on his own, who will take over if something happens to him, or if circumstances require him to go on a long trip. They both agreed to my request. As neither Melchior nor Casimir was involved with the workshop, they understood the amount of trouble not having a manager would cause them. "Melchior, Casimir, the temple workshop was made so that the orphans could sustain themselves," I said. "Under no circumstances should you take that from them. I wouldn't tolerate them using their noble authority to steal from the orphans. Do you really think I would do that, sister? We live in a harsh world, Melchior, where money moves, cruelty and embezzlement are sure to follow. It is your duty as an Archduke candidate to not only avoid extortion, but also ensure that it does not entrap those around you. More people than you would expect think poorly of orphans having an income and would jump at the chance to take it for themselves." I didn't think Melchior or Casimir would resort to embezzlement, but the latter had grown up in a society that scorned the temple. He had a side to him that wouldn't hesitate to sever the orphan's lifeline. I continued, "No matter how talented a scholar might be, no matter how well they treat you personally, they might not have the temple's best interests at heart. Dirk and Conrad feared such nobles and sought positions from which they could protect the orphanage. Melchior, I ask you to support Dirk for the sake of the orphanage and the temple at large. Understood. As the High Bishop, I will protect the orphanage. I checked the documents and reassignment plans Casimir laid out, then got Fran and Zob to prepare the money for the transfers. Casimir heaved a heavy sigh as he watched. More than anything else, Lady Rozemyne, we are sad to see you go. I never thought spring prayer would require so much mana. It would seem the temple has depended on your capacity for quite some time. We concluded this year's ceremony without incident for using the face stones filled with your divine power, but I truly fear for next year. Even when Wilfrid and Charlotte had circled the duchy for spring prayer, they had used face stones containing my mana. They were older now and wouldn't need quite as much support, but they still weren't relying exclusively on their own mana or preparing their own face stones. Casimir, it was decided that Oz could petition the Sovereign Temple during the Archduke Conference to return the blue priests taken from them, I said. Relay this information to the Archduke if you would. That would aid us greatly. We are in dire need of more blue priests and shrine maidens. To begin with, Ehrenfest Temple severely lacked adults. It was comprised mostly of children, as one could see from the new apprentices and those assisting the Archducal family. Looking at it now, one would never believe there had once been a time where only adults could participate in religious ceremonies. The returning blue priests and shrine maidens might still not be enough, I said. I would advise coming up with a way to bring more nobles into the temple. You could create a scenario where they would scramble for a place. Oh? How would we do that? Casimir asked, leaning forward. I was proposing the solution to what he saw as a serious issue. Make it so that only those who obtain more than 15 divine protections during their repeated protections ritual can serve the Archducal family. Or, prioritize those who obtain more than 10 as retainers at the Royal Academy. You will need the Archduke's permission in either case, but both should work nicely. Lady Rozemyne, that sounds much too... Casimir fell silent, but the look on his face spoke to how abnormal my idea seemed to him. It's far from unreasonable. If one dedicates a certain amount of mana to a divine instrument, they become able to form it themselves. My retainers competed to see who could create one first and obtain more divine protections in the process. I appreciate your advice, Lady Rozemyne. I shall not soon forget it. I signed the documents and paid as much was necessary for the attendants I wanted. Simply moving them from one temple to another was far cheaper than buying them fully. I might have been late to realize it, but the Sovereign Temple had severely underpaid the duchies that had sold them their blue priests and shrine maidens. It was a pretty irritating discovery. Lord Melchior, the Plantin company has arrived at the back gate, a guard announced. Melchior sent one attendant to greet them while the others started making tea. The room was much busier than a moment ago. Angelica, send an ordinance to Feline, I said. Fran, let us go welcome our guests. We headed to the room that was used when meeting merchants, and our guests soon arrived. Benno entered first, then a man and a woman I'd never seen before. Behind them were Demo, Zach, Johann, Joseph, and almost all the other Gutenbergs moving with us. Heidi was absent, having once again been left at home. It really is strange seeing Benno here without Lutz or Mark. They were together so often that one might think they were inseparable. I suppose that Lutz and Mark had elected not to come today because we were meeting with the Plantin Company's new store owner. I turned my attention to the pair I didn't recognize. Now that I was actually focused on her, the woman was obviously Benno's sister. Oh yeah! She's the one who's coming to do this. Okay. They had the same hair and eye color, and she had Karina's dainty features. The man must have been her husband. Allow me to introduce Jairus and Milda, the new heads of the Plantin Company, Benno said. Going forward, they will serve as the store's representatives during meetings at the temple. May today's gathering be useful to us all. The couple approached Melchior and me. Blessed be the waves that flew train, the goddess of water who guided us toward this serendipitous meeting. Jairus, Milda, from the bottom of my heart, may the goddess of water bless you both. Once we'd greeted our guests, we adjusted them to their seats. Milda is my sister, Benno explained. She's younger than me, but older than my other sister, Karina. Though she was living in another city with her husband, I summoned her back to inherit the Plantin Company. She was educated to inherit my old store, so you need not worry about a drop in sales. Oh, right! Benno said she took a husband from another city so she wouldn't need to marry one of the Guildmaster's sons. At least I think he did. Yeah, I think he did mention that. We had discussed the matter so long ago that I couldn't remember the details, but that was neither here nor there. I trusted Benno's younger sister to do right by his store. She was bound to be just like Karina. Warm and smiley with an intense thirst for profit. We might seem like newcomers, but rest assured we've been involved with the Plantin and Gilberta companies for years, Milda said. We provided ingredients to be used in Rinsham, plans to help with papermaking, and ingredients to aid with researching new ink. Isn't that to say I was completely wrecking Benno all that time ago? Milda continued, I was born and raised in the city and educated to inherit the Gilberta Company. I also have excellent bargaining power against both the Offmer Company and the Merchants Guild. Good to know. Wait, Is she going to blackmail the guildmaster with the circumstances of her marriage? If so, she really is Benno's little sister. I can already tell she's twice as lethal as Karina. Even with Benno's gone, the Plantin company is sure to be safe in her hands. I agree. Good luck to her. I came here today hoping to meet those who will manage the workshop after Lady Rozemyne's departure, Milda explained. Would that be all right? Fritz will continue to oversee it with Bards joining him as an administrator, Casimir replied. Lord Melchior, would you like me to summon them? Yes, thank you. Benno looked deeply concerned as he watched the trio's conversation. I deduced the reason and tried to put his mind at ease. Fritz and Bards will both serve Melchior, meaning the temple workshop will remain under archducal management. We appreciate your consideration. It was extremely important to the commoner merchants whether the Obb's family or other nobles would run the workshop. Benno relaxed a little, then put on his merchant smile and gave me an intense look. Sorry! In that case, Lady Rozemyne, might I ask you to explain where we are going and when? The reports we received are so at odds with one another that we have no idea how to decipher them. Benno's furious! He might be smiling, but there's fury in those dark red eyes. Sorry, this wasn't what I anticipated. We spent the past year preparing to move to the sovereignty at the end of spring, he said. Then, halfway through the season, a guard at the east gate told us you were becoming the new Ob Ehrensbach. We found that strange enough, so you can imagine our confusion when Lady Brunhilde brought us schematics for our new stores and workshops in Alexandria. I would appreciate some clarity on the matter. Oh dear. From his perspective, my destination had changed from the sovereignty to Ehrensbach to Alexandria in the span of a single season. Now he didn't know what was going on. I could sympathize with his irritation at not knowing whether to continue with his preparations. I wish I could explain it all, but I can't. Don't get mad at me. The truth of the matter was that I'd obtained my own Book of Messinora, stolen a foundation to rescue Ferdinand, and almost died to the gods themselves. I wouldn't have minded saying all that in the privacy of a hidden room, though. I wondered what it would actually accomplish. Benno and the others hadn't been exposed to much magic in their lives, so they wouldn't even be able to comprehend most of my story. I sincerely apologize for the abrupt change, but I am moving to Alexandria instead of the sovereignty. Of course, I should note that Alexandria is more or less just Ehrensbach under a new name. I will officially become its Ob during the Archduke Conference. Lady Rozemyne, an Ob? Benno muttered, slightly displeased with the idea. His tone reminded me that most people saw an enormous contrast between moving to the sovereignty and moving to another duchy. Not wanting him to pull out now, I desperately attempted to keep him on board. The Gutenbergs are my valued personnel, so I apologize that my circumstances impacted your move. Do not let it distract you from the sheer excellence of Alexandria, my very own library city. Printing cannot begin without the Plantin Company, and your stores have been made exactly as you wished. The stores and workshops have already been built. I used magic just the other day to construct a new castle and city. Do you remember the spell used to make Haas's monastery? Imagine that on a much larger scale. Feline, the map if you would. My trusty scholar spread a detailed map of the city on the table and then distributed smaller maps of the stores and their surroundings. The Gutenbergs analyzed them closely. Your new homes and stores are here, I said, indicating a spot on the larger map. Your workshops are here in the center of the lower city. So far, only these areas were remade with my Entwicklung. As people still need to pack and move, we plan to reconstruct the rest piecemeal. Benno looked at the maps and schematics and muttered, it hurts that Mark isn't here. Milda and Jairus, who had come in Mark's stead, were busy speaking with Melchior's group. They intended to stay in Ehrenfest, so they weren't too concerned with the details of our move. Lady Rozemyne, do these new buildings have windows and doors? Demo asked. Exactly the kind of question I would expect from a carpenter. We have installed our own, but you are welcome to replace them if you wish. Replacing all the doors and windows at once wouldn't have been feasible, so we were largely reusing the city's old ones. Only the more well-to-do were ordering their own. Benno, schedule that as my first job in Alexandria, Demo said. It should give my workshop a chance to make a name for itself. Benno, could you order the doorknobs, latches, and such from Johann, Zach asked, also trying to take advantage of this opportunity. You know he won't be disappointed. Out of all the Gutenbergs, the Plantin Company had the most money and the most experience setting up new stores. It made sense that everyone was consulting Benno, but he still scrunched up his face. Your first job is making more printing presses, he said. Can't start the printing industry otherwise. So we're back to making letter types, Johann asked, slumping his shoulders. Yes! Benno exhaled, then folded up the schematics. Lady Rozemyne, I am more interested in the schedule of our move than the layout of your new city. We were told when you planned to move to the sovereignty that the industry would not begin until you came of age. Now that you are becoming an Ob, I imagine that has changed. That is correct. We intend to start it sooner. I thought back to when I'd insisted that those involved with the printing industry wouldn't need to move before my coming of age. As much as I didn't want to admit it, Benno had been right in saying that plans involving me always ended up being rushed. His dark red eyes practically screamed, "Told you so!" As an ob, I must develop my duchy's industry. How soon can you be ready to move? The Gutenbergs had assumed they wouldn't need to relocate anytime soon. They had it much harder than Benno's lot, who had spent the past year preparing to move at a moment's notice. Johann met my eye while I was gazing around the room. I planned to move with the Plantin company from the start, he said. I was reminded that the foreman's granddaughter had turned him down and that he wanted to leave Ehrenfest as soon as he could. Heidi was motivated to begin with, and the Plantin company instructed us to hurry up and prepare to move the moment we were asked to review our stellar schematics, Joseph said, smacking the sheet in question with his finger. So, yeah, I can technically make this work. I would never have guessed that checking schematics would induce so much panic. The heck, it's like Benno can see the future! I stared at him in shock, only to receive a light glare in response. This wasn't a prediction I wanted to come true. His eyes seemed to say, but, well, here we are. He was being so discreet only because there were other nobles present. Otherwise, he would have already started grinding a fist against my head. Yeah, he would have. Sorry, but thanks. Your help is invaluable. However, Joseph continued, moving right away means Heidi won't be able to assist Horace with getting his credentials, leaving the workshop without a successor. She hopes to remedy this by letting him have one of the fruits of her research. May we have permission to spend money on this endeavor? I was already making an unreasonable request. If we could solve the problems I was causing my Gutenbergs by throwing money at them, then I would foot this bill without a second thought. Someone as passionate about research as Heidi would create new ink for Alexandria before we knew it. Compared to delaying the printing industry for 2 whole years, Joseph's proposal was nothing. You may. I want you both to be fully ready to move. My thanks. I turned to Demos, silently requesting his thoughts. I'm married, but it shouldn't be a problem, he said. I just need someone to hire me a carriage for our belongings. I won't be able to find one on such short notice. Next, all eyes fell on Zach. It depends how ready my wife is, he began with a slight grimace. I'm used to preparing for long trips without her, but moving all our things just sounds... Yeah, Demo said. My wife and I live with our family, so we can just leave the house to them once our stuff's packed, but that's not true for everyone. Joseph and Heidi were somewhat unusual since they went on their work trips together. Heidi in particular was especially eager to move. Zach's wife was more normal and would probably think the change was much too sudden. If you think she might take issue, then you are welcome to stay here for the time being, I said. Our original plan was for you to wait until my coming of age. We're setting up somewhere new, so I really should be there from the start. Zach continued to muse while I turned to Benno and said, let's say the Plantin company can also delay his move. Why is that, Benno asked. As I recall, his coming of age ceremony is right around the corner. His parents must be looking forward to celebrating with him, so I would not oppose him staying here until its conclusion. For all their communication issues, Les's family is very close. He's only a season away from becoming an adult, so letting him stay in Ehrenfest a little while longer was fine with me. Zach raised a good point, though. As someone due to start working in a new area, Les will also want to be in Alexandria from the beginning. I will pass your message on to him, but I suspect he will prioritize moving over celebrating with his family. Our Smith was still deep in thought when Johann gave him a slap on the shoulder. Don't worry, go at your wife's pace. I'll manage the workshop on my own. Somehow. They were going to be in the same workshop when they moved, so I wanted to help Zach as much as he could. Not that Zach seemed to appreciate it. Come on, you know that's not happening. Zach's rough response made the entire room fall silent. I tried to smooth things over by focusing on the schedule. We intend to start by setting up a printing workshop in the temple. It won't be too different from what Johann had to do on his trips, so he really should be able to manage on his own. Yeah, exactly, Johann exclaimed. I can manage. Don't get cocky, Zach snapped, a harsh glint in his gray eyes. Teaching Smiths to make letter types is nothing like starting a new workshop from scratch. I plan to have my wife do all the paperwork. Do you really think you can manage the finances on your own? You know enough math to make your schematics, but you make all sorts of mistakes when summing the cost of the materials. That's... In a brand new city where you have no connections, how do you expect to draw in customers? Your first jobs are registering the type's pumps and such with the smithing guild, then moving on to the merchant's guild, right? Alright, never mind. Johann hung his head, his protest turned to shreds. Far from a jack of all trades, he was at his best when he was silently working in the smithy. I appreciate the thought, Zach said. I just don't want the workshop to go under as soon as it opens. He sighed, then stood up straight and looked at me. Lady Rozemyne would rather move with the Plantin company. My wife might complain a little, but we can make it work. In short, the Gutenbergs would all do their best to move with me. I exhaled, relieved, and glanced at Benno. How was I going to make my next request without earning his ire? Benno pretended not to notice me at first, but eventually conceded and smiled. Yes, Lady Rozemyne, is there something else? He's asking whether I'm seriously intending to get more work, and well, I do. My sincerest apologies, but could you bring those from the temple with you when you move? Benno's face twisted in a grimace. For him to have made such a bitter expression in the presence of other nobles, my request must have been truly unreasonable. We have decided to move Fran and several others to Alexandria's temple, but they know little of the outside world, I explained. I cannot send them on the journey alone, or else I will cover the necessary cost for their travel. My concerns are not financial, Benno replied at length. I simply doubt I can procure enough boats and carriages. On a long-distance trip such as ours, taking food, clothes, and other goods into account, we will need a carriage or two for each person. I thought back to when we'd use carriages for spring prayer, counted the number of people who had traveled with us on my fingers, and sighed. We really would need a lot of carriages, especially when everyone was transporting their furniture and work tools on top of everything else. They wouldn't even have designated places to rest along the way, as was usually the case for those performing spring prayer. To complicate matters further, Benno's caravan would include women and children, and their slower speed would make them more vulnerable to bandit attacks. We could improve their security by hiring more guards, but where would we find them, and how many would be enough? I wonder if they could get Gunter and his men to guard them on the way there. Because Gunter's going to be going with them anyway, so I think he could do that. Not to mention, those guards would need to bring supplies, leaving the party with even more luggage to account for. Could you not take them in your high beast as you did with the Gutenbergs for our long-distance trips, Benno asked. Unfortunately not. My schedule's going to be full until the new duchy has settled down to some degree, and returning to Ehrenfest will prove much harder for me after the Archduke Conference. Still, I was the one forcing him to change his plans again. The least I could do was try to propose a solution. Would you be able to take them if we reduced your luggage to the bare minimum? Care to elaborate? My belongings are being moved to Alexandria via teleporters connected to the Royal Academy's dormitories. We could transport your luggage with mine and store it inside the castle for when you arrive. Furniture, work tools, out-of-season clothes, much of what Benno's party intended to bring wouldn't be of any use to them during the trip. Teleporting those goods would mean they could travel with far fewer carriages. Benno didn't even have a chance to reply before the other Gutenbergs started chiming in. That sounds tremendously helpful, Joseph said. We have lots of materials and tools for making ink, and I just know Heidi will want to grab more materials on the way. Yeah, you'll definitely need that extra room. I saw the sparkles in Demo's and Zach's eyes as they turned to each other. Won't this let us bring tools we were about to give up on? If we teleport one of the presses, we can start printing as soon as we arrive. Can you even move that? Seriously, how heavy is that thing? Would you even be able to move a printing press? Out of the temple into wherever the teleporter is. As some pumps. We need them for our new wells. I didn't mind them taking this opportunity to make their lives easier, but our main goal was to reduce the size of the caravan. We can only use the teleporters until the Archduke Conference, so make your preparations as quickly as you can, I said. It should give you more carriage space, no? Enough for Fran and the others? Benno shut his eyes, no doubt performing various calculations in his head. I would propose that we travel to Leisgame by boat, then to Conowitz by carriage, and then to the city of Alexandria by boat again. I would appreciate carriages and guards for when we arrive in Leisgame. According to Benno, boats would save more time than attempting the entire journey by carriage. Conowitz was one of the provinces I'd showered with my divine power, earning me the fisherman's gratitude, so I didn't foresee any issues there. But guards, I considered asking Leisgame for soldiers or anyone else they would spare to guard the Gutenbergs. Had we discussed the matter earlier, Lenore might have even been able to broach the subject for us, but she had already spoken with her family and said it on her return trip to Ehrenfest. We also had to consider who would take over as the caravan's escort when they crossed the border into Alexandria, not that anyone came to mind. Lady Rozemyne, Judith said out of nowhere, Daniel and I will guard them. Come again? Is that really acceptable? I was surprised to hear nobles volunteer to guard commoners. Oh, did you not hear? Lady Charlotte requested it. Charlotte did? She had apparently said nothing can be allowed to happen to my sisters Gutenbergs while they are traveling through Ehrenfest. Everyone feared I would charge to their rescue as I'd done with Ferdinand, causing an interduchy incident in the process. Yeah! My lower city family is traveling with them, so yeah, I most certainly would. She would do that. We were told to escort them to the border gate and then to Alexandria's castle, if possible, Judith explained. We were chosen because Lady Charlotte thought we were more likely than anyone else to seek your permission to enter Alexandria. I will cease to be your guard knight after your inauguration, so I was hoping to make the entire journey. Judith's violet eyes were brimming with hope. She must have really wanted to take a work trip to another duchy, as expected, since she hadn't been allowed to attend my engagement ceremony. I would very much appreciate that, I said. Having knights with magic tools protect the caravan would scare away bandits and allow for much easier communication. I grant you my permission, but your age means you must also ask your father before you can venture into another duchy. Not this again! I wish to allow you this final duty, but it depends on your father's decision. As for Daniel, I'll get the permission he needs from grandfather. I returned my attention to Benno. As I made such an unreasonable demand of you, allow me to arrange the boats, carriages, and guards. You may take these, proof that you are my personnel, and documents that will grant you access to Alexandria. They should make things a little easier for you. Benno received the documents with a satisfied grin. We shall move at once, as per your wishes. He tapped a finger against the large map on the table, the flame of ambition burning brightly in his eyes, and said, Can I assume this library city of yours will spread printing throughout the entire country? I recognized the look on his face and cackled. Indeed, I aim to spread books throughout Jurgenschmidt and gather copies of them all within my library. Start your move as soon as you can, and together we will make that dream a reality. Our meeting ended with a promise to meet again in Alexandria. Okay, what time is it? I'm kind of glad I already went and got my lunch taken care of. Considering I would normally be stopping and eating. Actually, it wouldn't have mattered because I would have already gotten this part recorded earlier instead of eating lunch. And then I would have been doing the last part for this one. Actually, wait a minute. Wait. How much more do we have left? Inauguration, attire, and closing the library. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do this last one, and then the last of it will be for the next video. Come on, go away. Milady! I was so deeply immersed in my textbook that I nearly leaped out of my skin when Riarda snatched it away from me. She must have been calling my name for a while because she shook her head and sighed. It is almost time to depart for the main building. Lady Florencia's and Lady Charlotte's seamstresses are due to arrive soon. You will need to pick the clothes and ornaments you wish to wear for your inauguration ceremony. Can I not just reuse what I wore for my engagement ceremony? I asked. It is the color of the season, and since it was made for my adoption by the king, it must be appropriate for an inauguration ceremony. I was also emotionally attached to the outfit, which included cloth dyed by Mom, cloth given to me by Ferdinand, and a hairpin made by Thule. Riarda and Ottilie both frowned. You have worn it twice in public already, during lunch with the royal family and your engagement ceremony. And Ehrenfest would surely feel slighted if you turned away the seamstresses Lady Florencia and Lady Charlotte were nice enough to summon for you. Riarda explained. The Archduke Conference spans several days. There will be plenty more chances for you to wear your favorite outfits. Okay, good. Because for some strange reason, I was thinking that they were going to tell her not to wear it because she'd already wore it before. Like, she couldn't wear it again. I'm like, dude, y'all waste some freaking clothes, I swear. I needed to wear clothes from Ehrenfest. Otherwise, the nobles of Old Ehrensbach would mock Sylvester for not looking out for his daughter about to become an ob. Many of them already opposed the thought of me taking over, so the last thing we wanted to do was create a weakness for them to exploit. Very well, let us depart. We received quite the selection, sister. Mother is trying hers on as we speak. Charlotte was awaiting us in a room full of clothes. Florencia's and her outfits had already been brought in, and we drank tea while they were laid out for us. Florencia was behind a screen. Charlotte, I said, Judith told me you arranged for her and Daniel to escort the Gutenbergs on their move. I thank you ever so much. Because of you, I was able to entrust them with the task without anyone complaining about knights guarding commoners. Judith had spoken with her father and, as expected, failed to secure his approval to leave the duchy. She was upset about going only as far as the border gate, but Ehrenfest's consideration meant I could use my knights from send my knights from Alexandria as well. Matthias and Lorenz would meet them at the gate. So they're not going to be down anybody when they get into Alexandria. I am glad to have been of use to you, sister, not to bluntly request something in return, but might I ask you to instruct Judith and Daniels to check the staff of the duchy when they arrive at the border gate. Check it for what, exactly? I doubted Charlotte had anything dubious in mind, but as I was leaving Ehrenfest, I didn't want to approve anything that might put them at risk. Any lingering damage from the battle in Gerlach. I insisted on going during spring prayer, but not even returning the stolen mana fully restored the land to normal. Simply using the chalice has expended mana, so a decent chunk of the stolen mana had unfortunately been lost. Greenery had returned to the province, restoring it from a barren wasteland incapable of supporting crops, but they still couldn't predict how its harvest would go. She continued, I wish to know whether the spring prayer I performed was enough to heal the land, whether it needed more mana, or whether we should devote ourselves to preparing more food for winter. Gieb Gerlach's estate was attacked directly, so our communication with the province is less than ideal. A new Gieb would normally be assigned after the Archduke Conference, but all the deaths in Gerlach might have complicated the handover. If the province needed assistance, then it was crucial that we find out sooner rather than later. Is it just me, or is my little sister way too amazing? She didn't even witness the battle, yet she's thinking about the aftermath and supporting those who need it. I was moved to know if she was being so considerate of her people and protecting the Gutenbergs while Ehrenfest adults were focused on the Archduke Conference. Jude, if you heard all that, I presume, check on Ilgner and Gerlach at the end of your trip. She agreed to my request, a slight smile on her face. You are next, Rozemyne, Florencia said as she came out from behind the screen. Your everyday clothes can come later. First, consider what you will wear for the Archduke Conference. Right on cue, the seamstresses brought my clothes into the room. There were so many outfits, some brand new and others simply altered. Each garment was dyed and embroidered in the style of its respective workshop, meaning I could mostly tell which ones had come from Florencia's seamstresses and which ones had come from Charlotte's. Let us start with this outfit, one of the seamstresses said. We might need to make a few more adjustments. I went behind the screen and started putting my arms through the sleeves. A proper fitting hadn't been an option for me, so I'd asked the seamstresses to base my new garments on already fitted clothes from the Gilberta Company. It must have been quite an ordeal for them. How very impressive, I said. It barely needs any alterations at all. The seamstresses broke into smiles and got to work, noting that the last changes were the most important. I was bound to have a lot of eyes on me during the Archduke Conference, so every last detail needed to be perfect. Several outfits later, I elected to take a break. Charlotte went behind the screen in my stead. Riarda poured me some tea, which I drank while looking over the finished clothing. Would it not be strange for me to wear blue during a conference held at the end of spring, I asked Florencia. Not at all, for it is the divine color of your birth season. Did any of the outfits take your fancy? I gestured to one her seamstresses had prepared, a mix of aqua and navy blue. May I wear this for the inauguration ceremony? It might bear too close a resemblance to your outfit, but... Florencia's clothes for the ceremony were a calm green. Their designs weren't identical to that of the clothes I'd chosen, but the two outfits still closely resembled each other, no doubt because they had come from the same seamstresses. True, both use cloth dyed by a Renaissance, and their pattern is the same, but the colors are enough to distinguish them. The contest was not only for selecting our personal dyers, but also for making patterns unique to an individual. Trends among noblewomen had changed quite a bit in my absence. Since you went to all this trouble, I think we should wear matching clothes for my inaugurations, I said. How does that sound to you? It should emphasize that I am on good terms with Ehrenfest. Florencia gave me a bright, warm smile. Yours are predominantly aqua, so they should pair nicely with your Alexandrian cape. Let us take this opportunity to match sashes as well. Maxine, do you recall those differently colored sashes I asked for? Bring them to me if you would. Florencia then told another of her retainers to inform Sylvester's attendants of our plan. You're telling Sylvester, I asked? Indeed, we will attend together, so some sense of unity is preferable. You would do well to inform Lord Ferdinand, seeing as your capes will not match. Eglantine would grant me the cape of my new duchy during the inauguration, but Ferdinand would continue to wear his Ehrenfest cape. In that regard, we were bound to be a little mismatched. I elected to write him a letter describing my clothes so he could wear something to go with them. Rozemyne, how would you feel about Brunhilde's outfit matching ours? Florencia asked. It wouldn't match perfectly because there wasn't enough time to make one from scratch, but a similar design and variant sash would at least give the impression from a distance. I'll respect your opinion, but I think we should give her a visible connection to you so that other nobles know of your bond. I welcome the idea, of course. Florencia informed me that she and Brunhilde had worn similar but differently colored hairpins during the Royal Academy's graduation ceremony. Perhaps because I wasn't from this world, I still didn't really understand the concept of second or third wives. It was more common for first and second wives to oppose each other than be friends, hence concerns that Brunhilde, a Leisgang noble, would cause discord within the archducal family, but I was glad to see Florencia buck this trend. As this might be our very last chance, Florencia held out a sound blocker. Would you allow me a moment of your time? Uh-oh. I glimpsed the small object in her hand and immediately began to shiver. My heart pounded in my chest. Just don't look at it. Have her put it in your hand and don't look at it. Look at her. My heart pounded in my chest and a cold sweat ran down my back. Is something the matter? Florencia asked, tilting her head at me. Ferdinand and my retainers must have hidden the truth so well that not even she knew about my face stone phobia. Oh, no, I replied, accepting the sound blocker with a forced smile. Having to feel it in my hand made me tremble even more, but I couldn't let my fear show. I would need to hold any number of magic tools and face stones during the Archduke Conference. Even as your departure for another duchy draws near, you agreed to wear matching clothes and respect Charlotte's every wish. I always thought it, but I am more certain now than ever. You truly are a saint. I was so taken aback when my mouth hung open and I forgot all about the face stone. For her to have said something so kind when I caused Ehrenfest nothing but trouble. Our relationship has been not strained, but not at all what one would expect of a mother and daughter, Florencia said with a sad smile. You have always been closer to your true mother, Elvira, and with Lord Ferdinand in charge of your education, I never knew whether it was acceptable to reach out to you. My upbringing meant I needed to study twice as hard to get accustomed to the ways of noble society. My meetings with other nobles had been heavily restricted, and I'd spent more time in the temple than in the castle. I'd also disregarded noble scholars and prioritized the commoners developing the printing industry. Florencia had tried to properly educate me as a first wife when I was engaged to Wilfrid, but I always refused on the grounds that I was much too busy. She hadn't known what to do with me as I'd charged ahead down my own path. I admit, she said, your reluctance to stay in the castle and tendency to avoid my education made me wonder if you hated me. Why would she hate you? She's given no indication as to a reason. That was never my intention. I still considered the restrictions in noble society unpleasant, and tea parties were always a bother, but I never hated or even disliked Florencia. I realized now that we did not have the same future in mind. That was all there was to it. Florencia continued, her expression betraying her melancholy. It is unfortunate that our time together in Ehrenfest's archducal family must end, but I am more grateful to you than I could ever put into words. You protected my children and devoted so much to the development of our duchy. I am grateful to you as well, for you let me do as I pleased when others would not. Sylvester wasn't the only one with exceptional patience. Florencia had striven to grant my wishes and clean up my messes no matter how many times I put her through the ringer. She had warned me about socializing and my education and taken me aside to give me advice, but at no point had she ever forced me into something I didn't want to do. I presume you will continue to live as you see fit, Florencia said. Even so, I must remind you of your sickly constitution and the importance of looking after your health. I mean, she's got Ferdinand for that too. I couldn't suppress a smile. Rozemyne, I was just thinking how wonderful it is that mothers always give their daughters the same advice. We might be taking separate roads, but you and I will always be dear. You are and will always be dear to me. Do take care of us well, Mother. Charlotte returned just as things were getting emotional. Florencia and I put our sound blockers down on the table. Having a secret conversation, were you? Charlotte asked, raising an eyebrow at us. I simply asked Rozemyne to continue being close with you even once she becomes an ob. Liar. You are my darling little sister, Charlotte. That will not change, no matter where I go. I exchanged a quick look and a smile with Florencia. It was only brief, but I was glad to have spoken privately with her. Milady, your schedule for today includes closing the library, Viarda said once I had eaten breakfast. Carriages and servants have already been prepared. Shall we contact Alexandria? Lostrom had sent word that he'd completed the task given to him, so Riarda had made the necessary arrangements for the rest of my estate-turned-library to be cleared out. Some of the luggage belonged to Ferdinand, so his retainers on Alexandria's side will need to be ready to receive it. Daniel, how are things over there? I asked. I met with Lord Justice yesterday. Lord Sergius will meet us in the Alexandria dormitory this afternoon. Daniel and Feline were going to Alexandria daily to help find more evidence of corrupt nobles, embezzlement, and other such crimes. In the process, they were also serving as a valuable line of communication. It was through them that we'd come to learn Roderick was already living in the new duchy. He'd rushed through an exceptionally busy move at Hartmut's, prompting. Yeah, prompting. We'll see about that. Lady Rozemyne, will you require my assistance today? Feline asked. No, I would rather you stay with Daniel and continue helping Ferdinand. Almost everything is packed, and my attendants can make sure the luggage is taken care of. Yes, my lady, we shall depart then. The pair turned to leave, but Audley stopped them. My apologies, Daniel, Feline, but could you deliver a message to Hartmut for me? Let him know that unless he returns soon, we will not be able to proceed with his move. Clarissa could do most of the packing, but Hartmut needed to be present to clear out his hidden room and such. Audley usually left him to his own devices, so she really must have been at the end of her rope. Angelica, how fares Laisletta? I asked. Have you made much progress with packing? Grisha had only needed to focus on her own move, meaning she already returned to work, but Lazetta was stuck doing two people's preparations. Angelica thought for a moment, then gazed at me quizzically. I think she said she would finish before the Archduke conference. I already knew that much. Damon and Flynn returned to Alexandria while I went to my library with my attendants and guard knights. Welcome back, Lady Rozemyne. Blossom, I am glad to hear you have completed your duties. I said, remembering everything he had needed to do. I thought Ferdinand was cruel to make him memorize so many documents before he could move, but Blossom had accomplished it without issue. It has been quite a while since I was last pushed to my limit, he replied. I grew so complacent while away from my lord that it was nice to warm up my mind a little before the move. He sounds a little too used to being worked to the bone, but what else can you expect from one of Ferdinand's retainers? Yeah, definitely. The very thought of that thick stack of documents being a mere warm-up made my heart ache. As one might expect, you really had to be on top of your game to survive serving Ferdinand. Is the luggage ready to be taken outside? I asked. Yes, only the library and your chambers remain to be cleared out. You will not be taking the furniture that was here when you received the estate, so there was not much to pack overall. Well, the books obviously needed to be packed. Aside from my chambers, I'd only really used the library, brewing room, and parlor since accepting this estate. I'd yet to even enter most of the rooms, and now I wouldn't need to, as Blossom had cleared them out for me. In that case, should my attendants start packing up the library, I asked? I will clear out my hidden room in the meantime. Angelica, fetch me a box, if you will. I got straight to work, storing letters from Ferdinand, the sound recording magic tool, and several other things in the box Angelica gave me. My hidden room was relatively empty in the first place, so the process didn't take me long. I returned to the others when I was done, set down my things, and then led some of my helpers into the hidden room to carry out the chair and such. It was clear in no time. Oh, Lady Rozemyne, Blossom had said, have you finished already? I did not have much to pack, I replied, then noticed the boxes of books being carried to the entrance hall. It saddens me to see the library so empty. Only a little, though, for its former contents are being moved to my new duchy. He nodded and gestured me to a seat. Please wait here until the luggage has been moved. I have a sentimental attachment to this place. It was my very first library, but the circumstances under which I received it bring me great sorrow. I mused aloud, taking in these surroundings for the last time. I always knew I could never truly be happy here. Blossom looked around as well, wearing a morose smile. This was not a place of pleasant memories for Lord Ferdinand, or for me for that matter. Though I managed this estate as his retainer, he seldom ever came here. Archduke candidates tended to leave the northern building after coming of age. Those who were engaged stayed there until they were married, and those who intended to remain in their duchy were given an estate in the nobles' quarter. It took roughly 2 years to move into the northern building, and the same was true of moving out. It was the beginning of summer when my lord received this estate from the previous Archduke, Blossom explained. He had just finished his 4th year at the academy. Though in those days, he stayed there year-round. The estate had already been furnished, and Ferdinand had said there was nothing for him to prepare, so he had stayed at the Royal Academy to focus on his research. Later, when the previous Archduke fell sick, Ferdinand was ordered to spend more time with the Knight's Order. Only then did he frequent this estate, for he was safer here than in the northern building. Eckert and Justice had also spent more time here, determined to stick by their lord. Karlstadt and Sylvester had visited on a regular basis. More time with the Knight's Order, I repeated. I remember hearing that he used to be the Knight Commander. Really? He was the previous Knight Commander. Huh. You knew? That was after his proposed marriage into Dunkelfelder was dropped in favor of Lady Magdalena's engagement with Lord Trollqual. The previous Archduke had wished for Lord Ferdinand to live similarly to Lord Bonifacius, hoping Lady Veronica would permit my lord to stay in Ehrenfest and support Sylvester. Lord Karlstadt agreed and started treating Lord Ferdinand as the Knight Commander. Sylvester had also agreed, so Karlstadt, who had already been in the Knight Commander by that point, had started doing what he could to prop up Ferdinand. Looking back on it all, the previous Archduke likely strove to create a place for Lord Ferdinand that would remain even after his own demise. My lord was displeased with having to spend so much time in the Knight's Order, for it meant he had less to devote to his research, of course. As the late Archduke's health deteriorated, Veronica's attacks became more severe. Ferdinand hadn't been able to spend as much time in the Royal Academy due to being treated as a Knight Commander rather than an Archduke candidate. So he had started to feel more and more trapped. At last, when the previous Archduke passed on, Lady Veronica ceased disguising her murderous intent, Blossom explained. My lord entered the temple at Lord Sylvester's advice, costing him his place in noble society. Sylvester was only trying to protect him, and I was told the same, that he simply wished to keep my lord safe from Lady Veronica, but if that were true, would it not have made more sense to send the crazed widow, rendered insane by the death of her husband, to the temple? I get how you feel, but that's so harsh. No wonder you're on good terms with Eckert. For a while, Lord Ferdinand commuted to the temple from this estate, but he spent more and more time there as the days went on. Eventually, he came here only when he had business in the castle or noble's quarter. I actually came to envy his temple attendants. I was unable to serve my lord no matter how passionately I wished to. I noticed a slight smile on Losfam's face as he continued. Eckert, Justice, and I had a celebratory drink when Lady Veronica was detained. Most others were busy in the aftermath, but our wrath for the woman was so profound that the Knight Commander ordered us to stay far away from her. It was a shame, really. Had she been detained somewhere other than the Ivory Tower, I could have enacted revenge on her in all manner of creative fashions. Oh no! What would they have done to her? Oh my god, that wouldn't have gone well. Oh! His last remark was so shocking that I could only stare at him in response. Despite his peaceful smile, Losfam was no less devoted than Ferdinand's other namesworn. Father, you were wise to keep him away from Veronica. He's out for revenge and violent as heck. Yeah, good call there, Karlstad. We had relatively little to do, but Lord Ferdinand was always between the temple, the castle, and Lord Karlstad's estate, Losfam noted, shooting me a knowing look. That must have been when I was studying like crazy to prepare for my baptism ceremony. As a result of your adoption by the Archduke, my lord sent Eckert and Justice to the estate on a more regular basis. He too spent time here upon his return to noble society. I was overjoyed to be of use to him. But then Ferdinand was sent to Ehrensbach where he was poisoned and almost died. Losfam had spent the entire time stuck in Ehrenfest. Listening to Losfam made it clear how much he, Eckert, and Justice loathed Detlinde and the Lanzanavians for endangering their lord. I was terribly worried about what revenge plans they might try to execute in the shadows of Alexandria. Praise be to Mestinora for banning the taking of any more lives. Her order will prevent the absolute worst from happening. I was ordered to serve you, Lady Rozemyne, at least on a temporary basis, but you, like my lord, were barely ever here. You spent your winters at the Royal Academy and the rest of your time moving between the castle and temple. In truth, I would rather have stayed in my library, but the situation hadn't allowed me to. It was tragic how little time I'd actually spent here. Still, I thoroughly enjoyed getting to watch you and your retainers, Losfam said. Your reports kept me well informed about Lord Ferdinand, and it was precisely because of this estate that he was saved. Indeed, before rescuing Ferdinand, we had used the estate to brew the tools and rejuvenation potions we needed. Eckert and Justice had rested in the meantime. Had we attempted the same thing in the castle, nobles would surely have interrupted us and complained about the operation. Lady Rozemyne, you have saved my lord in more ways than I can count. I am glad he is engaged to you and that his future is in Alexandria, not Ehrensbach. It means my waiting here the past year and a half was worth it. I put him in your care. A smile creased Losfam's green eyes. I was touched to know that he trusted me, but I also felt a sudden wave of pressure. As much as I wanted to give Ferdinand a joyous life, I felt like I was rarely successful. It is my every intention to treat Ferdinand well, I said. However, you might have been in this estate too long to know, but I cause him trouble more often than not. I always have. Please do not be mad when you see how we interact in Alexandria and the burdens he must endure because of me. Blossom attempted not to chuckle, but it was no use. I can make no promises, but... He burst into laughter for reasons I couldn't understand. I don't know, maybe he gets something that we don't. As I retraced our conversation thus far, a single thought came to mind. If ever I angered Losfam or one of Ferdinand's other retainers, I would immediately hole up in the Ivory Tower. Yeah, because they wouldn't be able to get you there. It was the only way to escape their revenge. Yes! Is that everything? Asked one of the servants. They must have finished moving the luggage. If so, we shall depart. Losfam looked around and nodded, taking the luggage to the front carriages in the castle's teleportation circle and the red paper in the back carriage to the northern building. Now then, everyone, please step outside. It is time to seal the estate. The servants took their leave first with Adelaide's group right behind them. I paused in the entrance hall. It didn't feel empty with all the furniture still there, but the absence of everything that mattered to us made me feel as though I'd wandered into someone else's estate. This was no longer my home. It would remain unused until it received its next master. Could you lock the door? Losfam asked me. I took out the key I always kept with me and did as he requested. It wasn't remotely nice having to seal the first library I'd ever obtained. I stood in place and stared at the door, overcome with longing and regret, but Losfam just seemed glad to be free of this place. This key is for attendants, he said, not seeming the least bit emotional as he gave me his key to the estate that had served as his home for all these years. Please return it to Ehrenfest alongside your own. Blossom was more sprightly than ever now that he was going back to serving Ferdinand. I even noticed a spring in his step as he marched on ahead and called, "Lady Rozemyne, I wish to travel to Alexandria ahead of schedule and place these books in the library there." "Don't even think about it," I exclaimed, whipping around and jumping into the carriage after him. "That joy is mine to have!" Oh my god, I love this story. Why does it have to end? Why? Oh god. How much more? I'm sorry, guys. Next video is going to be the last one. Until the spin-off comes out. Which we don't even know when that's going to be. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Next part is going to be the last part for Rozemyne's point of view for Ascendance of a Bookworm. I'll see you on the next one.